Weaponized Words: How Labels Control Perception by Rue. If we truly understand that words are agreements, then we must also understand that some agreements are designed to control perception. Language does not only describe reality, it frames it. And throughout history, certain words have been engineered, repeated, and emotionally charged so that the moment they are spoken, people stop thinking and begin reacting. These are linguistic weapons. They are labels designed to end conversations rather than open them. And when we examine history carefully, we find several terms that have carried extraordinary power, not because of their accuracy, but because of how they have been used socially and politically. Take the term anti-Semitic. On its surface, it appears to mean hostility towards Semitic people. And linguistically, the word Semitic historically refers to a family of languages: Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Akkadian, spoken by many different groups across the Middle East and North Africa. But in modern political use, the term anti-Semitic has been narrowed almost exclusively to mean hostility toward Jewish people. Protecting people from prejudice and violence is essential, and the history of persecution against Jewish communities is real and devastating. However, the word has also developed a second function. It can sometimes be used as a conversational shield, where criticism of political institutions, governments, or policies becomes conflated with hatred of an entire people. When that conflation occurs, debate collapses because the label carries moral finality. The accusation alone can end discussion. The power of the word then shifts from describing prejudice to regulating speech. Now consider the term pagan. Originally, in the Roman world, paganus simply meant rural or civilian, someone outside the urban military or political centers. When Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, the term began to be used for those who continued practicing traditional local religions, worship of nature cycles, ancestral rituals, agricultural festivals, polytheistic traditions. Gradually, the word pagan was transformed into a moral category. It became associated with barbarism, ignorance, devil worship, or moral corruption. This linguistic shift justified the suppression of indigenous spiritual systems across Europe and later across colonized territories. Entire cultural cosmologies were reduced to a single dismissive word. Labeling a people pagan made their traditions appear primitive and therefore easier to replace. Next, consider atheist. The modern meaning is someone who does not believe in a deity. But historically, the word has often functioned less as a neutral description and more as a social accusation. In many societies, particularly those where religious authority dominated public life, calling someone an atheist implied moral danger, disloyalty, or corruption. Philosophers in ancient Greece were accused of atheism simply for questioning mythological explanations. During various periods in European history, the label could isolate individuals from community trust. Even in modern discourse, the word can sometimes be used rhetorically to suggest someone lacks morality or purpose, even though belief and ethics are not identical. These examples reveal a pattern. When a word carries emotional weight strong enough to trigger fear, shame, or moral panic, it becomes a social control mechanism. And history offers many more examples. The word heretic once marked someone whose ideas differed from official doctrine. Once labeled a heretic, a person could be imprisoned or executed. The label justified punishment. The word witch was used across Europe to frame women, often healers, widows, or socially independent individuals, as threats to religious order. Accusations of witchcraft justified mass executions during various witch trials. The word savage was used during colonial expansion to describe indigenous populations in the Americas, Africa, and Australia, framing them as uncivilized and therefore supposedly legitimate targets for conquest. The word barbarian, originally meaning someone who spoke a foreign language to Greek ears, evolved into a synonym for brutality or cultural inferiority. The word infidel was used in religious conflicts to mark outsiders as enemies of divine order. And in more recent history, political labels like communist, terrorist, or traitor have at times been used not merely to describe ideology, but to silence dissent or justify extraordinary measures. The pattern is not limited to any one religion, culture, or era. The mechanism appears repeatedly wherever power intersects with language. A word is chosen, simplified, emotionally charged, and repeated until it becomes a reflex. Once that reflex exists, the label itself replaces investigation. This does not mean every use of these terms is manipulative. Prejudice exists and must be named. Violence exists and must be condemned. Belief systems differ and must be described. But understanding the history of language reminds us to examine how labels function before we accept them uncritically. When people learn to pause before reacting to powerful words, to ask what the term originally meant, how it evolved, and who benefits from its use, the spell weakens. Language returns to its proper role as a tool for communication rather than a weapon for control. And once we recognize that words shape perception, we can choose to use them with precision rather than surrendering our thinking to them. Ashe.